Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl as we continue our look at the Dwarven Mountain Holds as part of our deep dive faction focus. We've covered sort of the general army rules, we've covered all the characters, and now we're going to take a look at those core units. So first up are the Dwarf Warriors. This is the basic line infantry. So they got good weapon skill, toughness and leadership for basic line infantry, and that's what we're comparing it against if you think about the line infantry in other factions. However, they do have low movement and initiative, so pretty much standard dwarf stats. Troop type of heavy infantry, base size of 25 mil, and unit size is 5+. So equipment, they have hand weapons and heavy armor. That's what they come with. They do have an option for great weapons and shields, so they can get down to that 4+ armor save. They do get to have a full command group, and veteran can take 25 points of weapon runes. Now, also interestingly, so 0 to 1 unit per 1,000 points could become drilled, which is a free redress the ranks before moving, and can march within 8 inches of an enemy unit without a leadership test. And or they can also become veterans, which is re-roll all failed leadership tests. And they can purchase standard runes up to 50 points. So special rules wise, they are close order, they have hatred, orcs and goblins, magic resistance of 1, resolute, so those are pretty much the standard dwarf things, but they also have shield wall, which is once per game the unit can choose to give ground rather than fall back in good order. So to be honest, if you're taking dwarf warriors, I really like the dwarf warriors with hand weapons and shields, and then of course you gain access to that shield wall. Comments wise, overall it's a decent basic infantry unit for core. Stat wise, if you're going to take one, then I would take the shields, as I said, and the hand weapons. I'd also consider giving the unit drilled. I think drilled is overall better than veteran or taking standard runes. This is a basic infantry unit. You don't want to spend too much on it. You do have to pay the points for drilled and veteran and the standard. So overall, if I was going to give them anything, I would give them drilled. The main issue in Dwarf Core is that I just prefer the Quarrelers and Thunderers. Quarrelers aren't that much worse in terms of stat line. They get the range weapons. They can take great weapons too. Thunderers as well. So to make up my core points tax, which is the minimum of 25% of your army, is made up of core units. And given that I nearly always take a king, I've got those long beards in there. So, I'd take the Quarrelers, and then I'd probably, if I do want that sort of unit of line infantry, then because I'm taking a king, I'd probably take the Longbeards over the Dwarf Warriors. So, especially given that in terms of points, Quarrelers are only 1 point per model more, and Longbeards are only 3 points per model more than a Dwarf Warrior. So, overall, I just think there are better choices than them, but they're certainly not a bad unit. Compared to other basic line infantry. Weapon runes, none, and standard runes, none, because again, like I say, I'd like to keep these guys cheap. I'd rather maximize the numbers in the unit than make the unit expensive overall. Next up is probably my favorite standard core unit, and by that I mean you don't have to take anything else to get access to these guys, which are the Quarrelers. So they've got good toughness and leadership, low movement and initiative. There you go, the standard dwarf stats, heavy infantry, 25 mil base, and a unit size of 5+. Equipment, they get hand weapons, crossbows, and heavy armor. They do have access to great weapons and shields. Great weapons, not a bad option on these guys, boosting the strength. Shields as well, not bad. That gives you access to your 4+ armor save, but the initiative's low, so, striking last with a great weapon, but getting access to additional strength can actually make this crossbow unit relatively dangerous for missile infantry. Normal missile infantry, often quite an easy target, particularly for cavalry and so on. The dwarves, with their access to good armor, the fact that they'd have low initiative anyway, but can have good numbers of these guys with great weapons, actually could be quite nasty. And more nasty than you would expect charging into a unit of missile infantry. So full command group, and the veteran can take a pistol or brace of pistols, which again I never do, liking to keep these guys relatively cheap. Okay, pretty much the same special rules as you saw for the Dwarf Warriors, though no access to the shield wall, but they do get Dwarf crafted, so they do not suffer the -1 to hit when making a stand and shoot charge reaction, so that's really nice. It's going to give you a few extra hits when you're charged. You know, you've got missile infantry, you're going to stand and shoot, try and take down as many enemy models before they hit you as much as possible. So that's pretty nice. That Dwarf crafted is quite nice. So Quarrelers, they're my go-to core unit choice. Normally take a good couple of units of these. You know, and while hybrid infantry overall are a jack of all trades, i.e. they're not quite as tanky as the Dwarf Warriors that have the shield wall ability, the Quarrelers still have the heavy armor, they can still take the shield, same as Dwarf Warriors. You get the flexibility gained by hybrid infantry only for 1 point per model more. You know, and that, you know, the value in that's undeniable. And I generally prefer my core units to be ranged, as they're typically the weakest units in the army list, right? Normally your elite infantry are in special and rare. So in terms of the, when I mean weakest, I mean, you know, they're not going to have the best stats in terms of fighting ability. So their damage output and ability to take damage is generally lower than those more elite units. So, you know, to actually have them at range and shoot missile weapons, well, they're generally going to do that and have a good effect on the battle without having to physically get in combat or get in danger close range. Also, you know, when you consider the Thunderers, I actually prefer the crossbow to the handgun, mainly for the extra range. You know, you got 30 inches instead of 24, only 6 inches, but that can actually make a difference, particularly against, you know, other missile infantry, you know, that you might be facing. You might be able to outrange them. You know, both are strengths 4. The crossbow does lack the AP, but it is armor bane 2 compared to armor bane 1. So if you're putting enough shots out, then, you know, you're going to hopefully roll some 6s to hit, get some armor bane 2s in there. So yeah, you don't have the AP off base, but, you know, armor has been significantly, you know, reduced across the board. So while we're seeing lots of armor here with the dwarves, you know, a lot of, you know, heavy armor 5+, you know, you're still going to have good chance for people to fail their armor saves unless they get really lucky. So I actually prefer the crossbow to the handgun in most cases. So Thunderers then, they're identical to the Quarrelers. They're basically Quarrelers that swap their crossbows for handguns. So everything that you see here is the same, can take great weapons, shields, and so on. And exactly the same special rules as well. So Thunderers, they're the same as Quarrelers, but with handguns instead of crossbows. They're 1 point per model more than Quarrelers as well. So, you know, that's why I prefer the Quarrelers. They're cheaper, but I actually prefer the crossbow to the handgun anyway. Again, you know, flexibility gained by hybrid infantry. You know, these guys are only 2 points per model more than a Dwarf Warrior. So, you know, you can still take the Thunderer if you want some of that extra AP in your army. And, you know, pretty much the same rules apply in terms of the flexibility and the fact I like my core units to be ranged in general. And we kind of put the Longbeards out as that because you only get one and they're really, really a special unit. So I consider taking a single unit of Thunderers for those really heavily armoured units when I need the guaranteed AP -1 with the armour bane on top. But overall, you'll normally find that I'm defaulting to Quarrelers. So yeah, Thunderers, they're not bad. It just depends if you really want those handguns with that extra AP or not. And there you go. That brings us to the end of the basic core units, i.e. you don't need to take a King or a Thane or anything to get access to these other units. And you know, the Rangers, yes, it's 0 to 1, but actually you can take any number of them in rare, so they're really a rare choice. So those are the 3 main basic core units. As I said, the Dwarves, they don't have bad core units. It's just the Quarrelers really stick out for me as being a good choice. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And if you want to see more content, hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do. It's a big deal for me, so thank you for that. And thank you to all those who have already subscribed. You've been watching The Ghost Owl. Tune back in for the next part where we start to get into the special units, of which there are quite a few.